In this video, we're just going to go through a simple example of creating a catalog item, a workflow that executes when the catalog item is ordered. And then what we're going to do is once that's built, we'll be putting that in an update set. So the first thing we'll actually do is create an update set that will contain the new catalog item and workflow. And then once we've got all of that built and they're in the update set, we'll export the update set so that it can be exported to XML, and then that will be imported into another instance so we can show what that sequence would look like. So as you look at the screen here, the first thing we need to do is we're going to create a new update set. And so as I click on this gear on the upper right hand corner, this is Fuji, you can see our current update set is default. So I'm going to click on that little link there and it's going to take me to the list of update sets. Go ahead and create a new one. I'll call it server request and I'll leave it to in progress and I'll hit submit. Now I could have hit submit and make current. Doesn't really matter. But I can come up here and change our update set to server request. So what that's doing is that update set will now capture any changes that are made in the instance. So when I create my new catalog item, it's going to get included into that update set. So the next thing I'm going to do is create a new catalog item. So come down here to Service Catalog, click on Maintain Items, click New. We're going to call our item a Server Request. And we'll just say, short description, we'll make it the same, Server Request. And for now I'll leave the description section empty. Go ahead and right click on that and save that. So now I have an empty catalog item. So if I click try it, I'm going to get an empty page and you're going to see the cart off to the right. For this example, I'm not going to turn all this off, but you can actually turn all the cart options off if you want to do that. So I'm going to go back to my item definition and I'm going to put in a few different variables here that we're going to capture when we order or place a new server request. So the first thing we want to know is operating system. And then I'll just make my variable name OS. This will not be visible. This is just for workflow to reference the variable. So we'll say operating system. We're going to make that a choice. Actually call that a select box here. So I'll make that a select box. And when I save this, once that is saved, I can add my options to the select box. So down here under question choices, we'll go ahead and say Windows. And you can have different text displayed versus what value gets stored. I'll make them the same for now. So say Windows and Linux. Go ahead and save that. And when I go back to my item, so I think I'm actually going to have to click over here and go back to Maintain Items and go to my Server Request item. I've got this variable down here at the bottom, operating system, and when I click try it, I should now have a drop down, and I do. So pretty easy to do. So what we'll do now is just add a few more variables. So we're going to have operating system, we'll put in RAM and storage as well. So we'll make these select boxes. Go ahead and save that. Put my choices in here. I'm going to go ahead and type these in, but I'll skip the video forward here in a second so you don't have to watch me do all of that. So now that I've put my values in, I'm going to go ahead and add to this list the order that these are going to be displayed in. And that way I can set what order I want them displayed in. So all I've done is just add that column to my list. So we'll say that's 100. It's going to be 200. And you can use whatever numbering scheme you want here. Okay, so we're going back to our item. If I click try it now, we have Windows and then we have RAM, and you can see those are ordered properly. So what I'll do now is add a couple more variables. We'll go with storage is another one. And the idea here is we're just creating a simple form so for someone to request a new server. We'll make this a select box as well. And I'll fill these out here. So say 250 gigabytes. Okay, so we'll just do those three. Should take us back to our item, and now when I click try it, okay, you'll notice that storage is above operating system, and so what I'd like to do is have storage at the bottom here. So the way you do that is there's an order. If the order field is not in your list, you can always add it to the list, but basically you can come in here and put in where you want these to be displayed. And then when we try it now, we get the order we want. Okay, so the next thing we're going to put in here is PCI and encryption. Those are two other things we want to collect as part of this. So these will be different variable types. PCI, PCI. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to go with a checkbox. So what a checkbox will do is just give us a checkbox where if it's checked it's true, and if it's not checked it's false. Go ahead and submit that. And I'll set the order of that to 40. Create another one. So we're going to go with another checkbox. And this checkbox is going to be for encryption, whether the server will require encryption. And these variables will be used in the workflow to make different decisions, and you'll see that a little bit later in the video sequence here. Okay, so put that at 50. Two more variables we'll put on here, and you can put as many of these as you want, but we'll go with due date, and we'll make that just a simple date variable. And then the last variable we're going to put on here after I set the order, we'll put a comment. So this will allow the submitter to enter a comment. And we'll make the comment a multi-line text field. So this is pretty simple, but it does get you structured information as input. So rather than receiving an email, you're now receiving structured information where you can put structured workflow around it, structured decisioning, SLAs, etc. So we'll go ahead and put 70 there for comment. And now when we try this, we should have a form that lets us enter this information, and we do. So we can pick operating system, RAM, storage. We can check these or uncheck these. We can select a due date. We can put in a comment. So that's the first piece of this this video, is getting your update set in place and then building a catalog item. And so what we're going to do now is transition to workflow and show you how to build a workflow that will execute when this item is ordered. So go back to maintain items here real quick. We'll look at our server request, and you'll notice that there is a workflow box here. So currently we do not have a workflow built. What we're going to do is build a workflow that will execute when this item is ordered. The workflow that we're going to build is going to look very similar to the one I'm going to show you now. So as you look at the screen, you can see we have a workflow that I built for a prior example, but it's we're going to copy this basically. We're going to have an approval when the request is received. We're going to check to see if the PCI checkbox has been checked, and if it has, we're going to create a task for that team. If encryption has been checked, we're going to create a task for that team. If not, we'll skip those. Ultimately, we'll go down to the build and install task that will get assigned to that team. And then we could have, I may or may not add this one because it's just kind of redundant for the example, but we could have an additional task for validating the server as well. So if I switch back over to the example we've been building, and here's our item. Up in the filter here, I'm going to type workflow, and I'm going to select the workflow editor. And once I get into the editor, I'm going to right click over, I shouldn't say right click, I'm going to click on the plus sign here. This is going to create a new workflow. Right. And in here we're going to type in, we'll give the workflow a name, we'll call it server request workflow. The table is going to be requested, let me see here, it's requested item. There it is right there, requested item. You'll notice when we select that the conditions go away because these run based on how they're assigned to items, and so you won't have any conditions for these workflows. I click submit, and then the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up an approval. So I'm just clicking and dragging my end activity to get it out of the way. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab an individual user approval. This could be a group as well, but I'll just make it user for now. And then here we're going to type in, give this a name, so we'll just say approval. And we'll come down here to users. I'm just going to make Fred Luddy my approver. Really don't have to do anything else. There are a number of settings in here that we could set if we wanted to for different that make the approval behave differently, but for now we'll just leave this as is. Go ahead and click submit. Right, so there's that activity. Go ahead and right click on the end activity and copy that. All I'm doing here is just putting rejected to end. You'd likely put a notification or something like that in there, but I won't bother with that for now. Let's just test this and make sure this works. And so we've created this workflow, and we're now going to have to associate it to the item we created. So I'll go ahead and publish the workflow. It's called server request workflow. I'll go back to my item. So here we are in our item record, and I'll start typing in here server and server request workflow. There it is. Go ahead and save this. And so what we've done now is we've associated that workflow to this item. So when this item is ordered, that workflow is going to execute. I'm going to test it by clicking try it. And really I can leave all this stuff pretty much the way it is. I'll go ahead and put a date in here. This doesn't really matter. You can click Order Now. And so what we should have is a request, which we do. I can click on the item that is in the request here, Server Request. That'll take me to that record. And if I scroll down in that record, there should be a Show Workflow, and there is. And we can see that our workflow is executed and it's sitting in a wait state for approval. I'll go back to my requested item record here and click on Approvers. I can right click on that and approve from here just for our testing. We'll come back to our workflow and refresh it. And it worked. Alright, so we know that we've successfully created our workflow and associated our workflow to the catalog item that we created. So the next thing we want to do is put in a check. So I'm going to check this out so I can start editing the workflow again. I want to put a check in here to see if PCI was selected. And so we're going to use a little bit of script to do this, very simple to do. So we're going to come over here and grab a run script activity. I'm going to call this PCI, and I'll put a question mark there. Then we're going to put some script in here. So I'm going to actually paste that in because I already have this off to the side. It's just a small snippet. Okay, so you can see the script that I've put in here. So I'm setting activity results. This is a global setting. So this is just something that you could basically copy. And whatever you set this to is the different conditional paths that'll go out, and I'll show that to you here in a second. But what we're doing is if PCI, so current.variables.bci, if that's been checked, this will return true, which will ultimately be a yes, and if it's not checked, it'll be a no. So just a small little script to do that. I'm going to click Submit, and then the last thing we need to do before we can validate that this is working is we're going to add two conditions here, so we have two different paths out of our script. So I'm going to double click on Always, and instead of Always I'm going to say Yes, and I'm going to set my condition to activity.result equals yes, and this is very important that you type that exactly as you see there. And then I'm going to right click on my activity here. I'm going to select the Add Condition option. Say no, and then this will be activity.result equals no. Oops, I don't need that there. So very simple little script here. So that's going to give us a couple of different paths. I'm not sure how I got the error there. Let me go ahead and get rid of that. Oops. Just click delete. And for now, we'll go ahead and put these to different places just for our testing purposes, right? So you can see here after we approve, we're going to check to see if PCI is true or not. Go ahead and publish this. And so when you build these, you always want to test as you go. So I'm going to come back to my service catalog, go to my maintain items, go to my server request, click on try it, and I'm going to check PCI. And hopefully when I click order now and I look at the workflow, scroll down in here. Alright, so we've gotten to our approval wait state, so I'll go ahead and approve. And then when we go to our workflow and refresh, you can see that we went out of the approved path that checked for PCI, and PCI had been checked, so we've gone out of that path and we've gone to the end. So all we've done now is just validated that the workflow is behaving the way we expect based on the inputs we've given it in our request. So the next step here is I'm going to go ahead and add a task to our workflow. So back to our workflow, check out. So we're going to create a human task. So the way you do that is you come over here, and there is, over in the toolbox, and there is a task section here. I'm going to just create, you can create a catalog task or a regular task, doesn't really matter. I guess for now we'll go ahead and create a catalog task. This is up to you how you want to store your tasks. It's likely you'd probably create some other task types. So we're just going to call this a PCI task, and this is going to be assigned to the PCI team. So I had set up, I'll show this actually real quick, in the system. Before I started this, I set up 3 groups. You can see here the encryption team, the PCI team, and the server build team. And so those teams, or those groups, have members. I just put some sample members in there. So I put those there before I started the video. And so the name here is PCI task, and then there's going to be a question about who the fulfillment group is going to be. So if I start to type PCI, we'll see PCI team pop up. So that's going to be my fulfillment group. Short description, I'm just going to say PCI task. You could make this whatever you want. Task value from, you can choose a couple different things here. I'm just going to leave it fields for now. But what this is going to do is create a task that gets assigned to whomever is on the PCI team. And then you can see the variables if you want to include all of these variables in the task so they can see the information that the user submitted. You can just simply do that. So I'll go ahead and click submit. And so the way this is going to work is that the process will wait on that task until it completes before it goes to the end. So we'll go ahead and publish this. Click OK. Come back to my item. So go to maintain items. Go to my server request. Click try it. I'll go ahead and click PCI. Click order now. So this should kick off our workflow so we can test and make sure that's doing what we expect it to do. So here's our item that we just requested. Go ahead and approve just to get the workflow to move along. And then when we scroll down in here to the workflow again, we should see, okay, so we approved it. PCI was checked, so now it's gone to the catalog task. If we go back to our item, you can see for our catalog tasks, PCI team has a task. If we go into that record, here's the task record, and you can see the information that's being passed along in our variables there. So you can certainly make this look different or add additional information, but the point is it's very easy to add human tasks to this. And so that's really our pattern. I'm not going to do a whole lot more there. What I will do, let me go ahead and finish that task so you can see that when you close the task, the workflow continues. So I'll right click on that, and let's see, actually I'll have to go into the task here. I'll close that task. So we're acting like a member of the PCI team at this point. If we go back to our workflow, once that task is closed, you can see it goes out of that path. So I'm not going to walk through building the rest. I will go ahead and build the rest of the workflow, but the pattern is exactly the same. We're going to have an additional if. So if we go look at our the original one that I talked about at the beginning of the video, we'll have another if for our encryption. We'll have a team assignment for encryption. We'll have another task for fulfillment and potentially for validation and go to the end. So I'll finish that out, and then I'll pick the video back up where we will export this out so that it can be imported into a production environment or likely a QA environment for testing. Okay, so I finished building the workflow. You can see here that I added an activity to check if the encryption checkbox has been checked. So I'll go ahead and check this out just so you can see some of these. It's identical really to the PCI activity. The only difference here is I've changed the variable to encryption. I'll mention too, these current variables dot encryption, when you see those dot names there, when you look at the item variables that we created earlier, the name that we gave the variables, so here this is the question, but it's not actually showing the name. So if we were to come down to encryption, when we go into that variable, you see here where it has name, that name is what we're referencing in the script. So just an important thing to understand there. And so if that is true, then we're going to have a task. Just like we had the PCI task, we're going to have an encryption task. And then ultimately we're going to have a server build task. And the groups that I've assigned these to are different. And you could actually have different task types, but we won't get into that for this video. So what I'll do now is just go ahead and publish this and run it so you can see that it works. And then the last thing we'll do is package it up so that it can be imported into another instance. So I'll come back over to our service catalog and we'll go to maintain items. I'm going to go ahead and click on try it. And here I'll select both PCI and encryption. I'll put a due date in here. I need a server, something like that. And I'll click order now. And so this is going to kick off our workflow. I can go directly to the item simply by clicking on my server request there. And when I scroll down in here, first thing we'll see is we have an approval pending, right? So we'll go to our workflow. We can see we're at the approval step. We'll go ahead and approve. Of course, I can do this because I'm logged in as admin, so normally this would happen via mobile device or email or something like that. We'll go back to the workflow. You can see the PCI was true, so now we have a PCI task. We scroll down to catalog tasks. You can see there it is. I'm just going to right click and choose the close task option just to make it a little faster here. And when this refreshes, you'll see in our tasks that we have another task in here now for the encryption team. And if we were to look at our workflow and refresh it, you can see that that aligns with what the workflow is doing because encryption was selected, so we've created that task. Go ahead and close that one. We should have a third task in here now, which we do. Okay, and that's our server build. If I refresh our workflow, you can see there's that. We'll right click there and close that task. And now when we go to our workflow, you can see the workflow has gone to the end. So this is working as expected. So at this point, we should be good, right? We're ready to give this to the team that's responsible for QA. So what we want to do is take this work and make sure that it's in our update set. We finish up our update set, and then we're going to export it out to XML. So the way we do that is we're going to come over here to our gear, and we're going to click on this option here for update set. We're going to click on our update set list, and we're going to set this server request update set to complete. Go ahead and save it. All right, so at this point now our update set has encapsulated all the work we've done. And so as you look under here, customer updates, you see the variables that we created, you see the choices that are in there, you see the server request catalog item, you see the workflow, so that's all there. And so we can now export this to XML, and then we'll import it into another instance. So go ahead and click on Export to XML. I'm going to send this to my desktop, and I'm going to call this, we'll call this server request. So this is what I'm naming just the file. I'll save that to my desktop. So now that XML file can be imported into another instance. Okay, so now that we have our update set exported to XML, I've switched to another instance. So this might be a QA instance or UAT instance or something like that. And if you type in the filter update, there's an option here, retrieved update sets, and then you'll get to this list here, and you can choose to import update set from XML. And then once you do that, you can choose your file. So in our case, it was on our desktop. We called it serverrequest.xml. I'm going to go ahead and click open. Choose the upload option there. Alright, so you can see it's loaded. I'll go into that record. And I'll preview the update set. Looks like we have one error. Not sure what that one is. Let's see. Could not find a record, and I'm not sure that's going to matter. So we'll go ahead and accept remote update. I think that might be all right. We'll go back to our retrieved update sets. Click on that, and then commit the update set. Alright, so it looks like the commit's complete. So now that we've committed it, we should be able to go to our service catalog. So here's our service catalog. Let's look under maintain items here. And I'll sort this by updated. Okay, so it looks like our server request imported alright. Scroll down and see if we have all of our variables. Looks like those came across. We can quickly just click on try it. Looks like we've got everything we expected: OS, RAM, storage, PCI encryption. Yep, they're all there. Let's go look in our workflow here real quick. See if our workflow came across. Should have a server request workflow, and we do. Okay, so that looks like it's come across fine. We may not have groups, right? So the groups that I had on my other instance may not have come across. I can't remember if I created those as part of the update set or not, so I may have forgotten to do that. Yeah, so you'll see there, because I didn't do that, that the fulfillment groups are empty. So something just to be aware of there, but that's okay. It's an easy fix. That's an easy thing to fix. Let me switch back here and go back to our item. We'll go ahead and order this and see if we at least get the workflow to kick off. So click on my item, and you can see here that the workflow is associated correctly. So when we hit try it, we'll pick PCI and encryption, put a due date in there, comment, click order now. On our test instance here, click on server request, go down to our workflow. Let's see if that worked. Looks like it did, so our workflow has started. We'll switch back over here. Of course, this has got a different layout for the tabs, so I'll go ahead and click approve. You can turn that option so it tabs or does it vertically. We'll scroll down in here, click on show workflow, and it's moved on to PCI. So this is behaving the way we expect. So you can see that you can easily create a catalog item, create the workflow, package it up in an XML update set, load it into another instance, and test it from there. So that's it. I'll wrap up the video with that. But that covers the basics of creating a catalog item through workflow, through export, and through import to another instance.